Alright everyone, welcome back to my channel. If I look like a mess, it's because I feel like a mess. It has basically been the busiest day of the year at work and definitely took its toll on me, especially because obviously on top of all of the normal busy things that do tend to happen today, there was the usual chaos of, nobody else's life stops, everyone else still needs to get in touch with me at work, and I definitely had a couple of very stressful calls, so I'm definitely relieved that today, being the Tuesday after Easter, is finally over. So I am going to cook up these Dan Dan noodles in here. I'm aware that they aren't completely kind of traditional. They involve egg noodles rather than say wheat noodles, anything like that. And I also don't have coriander seeds. I wasn't going to go out of my way to buy any, so I'm just going to use some dried coriander instead. But I do have all of the other ingredients available as well. I'm obviously going to make a slightly smaller amount than it does say to make in the book. But let me just put that out of the way whilst I keep babbling to you. But I am looking forward to eating it. I am eating quite early, but I did wake up quite early today. And with that, my sort of lunch breaks and everything were all pretty early for once as well. The opposite problem to normal. My lunch break was for 11:45 instead, so there's absolutely no consistency in my breaks, especially on a day like today as well, where they were trying to desperately schedule everyone into a bit of a better order. I was just grabbing a few extra ingredients that I needed out, some spring onions and some sriracha as well. But let me show you how I'm going to put this together as well. Like I said, it's definitely a more simple recipe today, but then tomorrow I'm probably going to do some halloumi kind of quinoa salad as well, just for ease. But yeah, let me throw it all together now and hopefully it will taste pretty good. Okay, so I'm just going to get started by putting some egg noodles into this pan of boiling water. Yes, I am obviously doing less than the actual recipe suggests because, well, I don't need to make quite that much food. So I am going to do it. So I just do one of these because there are 3 servings worth in here. So that does end up working out, obviously, as 3 of these. I probably should have done a slightly larger pan. Oh well, everyone makes mistakes. But yeah, let me get on with showing you the rest of the recipe and putting it all together as well. Okay, so I've just got some spray oil in this pan. And then I put in a splattering of just dried coriander as well. So then I'm just going to add in pork mince. Pork mince is normally what is used in sort of Dan Dan noodles rather than any other kind of mince. But if you don't have pork mince or if you don't eat pork, then go for something like turkey or chicken mince instead. I'd probably avoid beef mince, but turkey or chicken would work out as a perfectly reasonable alternative as well. I don't have one of those funny specialised mince masher uppers, so I am just going to use this spatula and then just keep an eye on it whilst everything is getting cooked up, and then I'll be able to add in the rest of the ingredients to everything as well. Alright, so I have drained off those noodles and I'm also going to drain off, well not drain, but empty the pork mince into a separate container just whilst I continue cooking things into this pan as well, because then the pork mince will get re-added in later on as well. So just do that and put that here whilst I chop everything else up still that needs to go in here. So I have sort of the spring onions and garlic that I need to finish doing first, and then I'll pop them in here. Right, so I've added the ginger in there. It's about 3 pretty small cloves. And then I'm adding in 2 spring onions into here as well. It does say to do about 1 clove of garlic per person, and then about 1 spring onion a person as well. But I quite enjoy sort of the garlicky and spring onion kick to it. So I'm just going to add in a little bit more spray oil into here as well, just to give it a bit of a helping hand, and let this do for a couple of minutes. But whilst that is doing, I'm actually going to add in, so I've already made up some small amount of chicken stock just here. And I'm going to add into it a few more added ingredients, including some sriracha. Oh, I nearly took the full lid off them. That would be an absolute disaster if I'd done that. So about a tablespoon of sriracha. And I'm adding in just some standard black pepper as well. just kind of about 1/4 of a teaspoon of ground up black pepper. And then I have some white rice wine vinegar as well. I'm going to add in about 1/2 tablespoon of that. And then add in the rest of this bottle of light soy sauce that I have, which will be about sort of 2 tablespoons worth, about 1.5 to 2 tablespoons of it. And then I need to add in a dash of sugar as well and give it all a good stir to combine. It does say that I can just add it all into sort of the pan and stir it in there, but I figured, seeing as I've made up the stock and I have that here to hand anyway, it makes sense for me to give it a good mix up first, and then I can always give it a taste test and make any adjustments to it that I need as well. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit more of I have some dark soy sauce that I think I'm going to add into it as well, because it doesn't necessarily feel the most balanced thing I have going on. Apparently I haven't opened this dark soy sauce, so let me battle with the packaging so I can open it. I'm obviously making sure to keep an eye out on these onions, the spring onions, and then the garlic as well. And some of the coloration that you're seeing isn't actually obviously from that, it is more just from the sort of the pan and it having the pork mince with that coriander happening in there as well. But there we go. Add in some extra soy sauce. I'm probably going to add in a little bit of extra sriracha as well. I feel like I might have added in a bit too much of the rice wine vinegar, and it sort of threw the quantity in terms of everything off a little bit. So let's try and give that another good mix. See how we get on there. Yeah, that's a lot better. It's definitely changed a huge amount in colour as well. Compared to what it was before, it's now definitely a lot darker in colour compared to when it was just pure stock. But let me be sensible and pop a few more bits and bobs away as I'm going around, because, like I said, after my day today, I don't particularly want to have to come back into the kitchen and deal with a lot of chaos later on. So there we go, so all those bits popped away, and I will now just give these one final mix around before I do add in that sauce as well. Hopefully it won't be too aggressive. It says to add this all in. Okay. So that's all added, and it doesn't say to wait for it to heat up or anything. It does just say to add that pork back in as well. So we'll add that in, and it says to leave it for 2 to 3 minutes whilst everything else sort of thickens up. So you can do that, and then once it has thickened up, I just need to add the noodles and get them all sort of stirred through and get them nicely heated back up. So what I'm going to do in the meantime is roughly chop up a handful of peanuts that I have, just so that they'll be able to go on top as well. And then that's what the sesame oil will be for, to sprinkle or sort of drizzle on top again as well. All right, so I have turned the heat off now, and as you can see, it has thickened up pretty well. So I'm just going to add these noodles in. Obviously they've been sitting around a little bit, so they're kind of coagulated together a little bit. I'm also going to put in a tiny amount of that water as well, which might seem counterintuitive, but I think it'll really help to keep sort of that sauce being a little bit more, I don't want to say silky at all, but kind of stop it from getting too absorbed into the noodles. Obviously want them to become nicely coated, but they also do have a habit of soaking up sauce as well. Okay, mixing this all in together is obviously going to be pretty difficult, but this is one of those recipes where I've obviously done the noodles, so it says it's a serves one portion, and then I did enough pork mince so it was just for one as well. So it's just a one person friendly recipe. It just probably looks like a lot because of how big this pan is, but it is pretty thinly coated apart from the chaos of noodles in the middle. So I'm just going to attempt to serve it up, make it look somehow sort of presentable. Now I'm going to top it with some sesame oil and some peanuts as well for a bit of added flavour. Let's attempt to make it look somewhat pretty. I don't know how we're going to do this because this is me and pretty serving doesn't really go together, but let's see if I can do it so all of the noodles are kind of fairly well on the bottom, and then we can do it so a lot of it then just goes on the top like that as well. But I hope everybody had a wonderful Easter weekend, that this week started off decently well for you as well. I'm hoping that my week will get a little bit easier, but I'm not going to hold my hopes up. I've done another shift slide for tomorrow, so I start at 7:45, which I work slightly shorter days on a Wednesday anyway, so it will mean that I finish at 4:45, something like that. So definitely something to be looking forward to. But yeah, see, so my serving is still pretty shambolic, but let's see if I can move that there. And like I said, let me just put some of these peanuts on top as well. Again, not done the prettiest of ways. I probably should have sprinkled it using my fingers, but it'll be fine. Let's distribute it like that. Remember, if you are serving up for other people, don't use your fingers like I just did. But there we go. One served up dinner. Let me give it a quick taste test. I'm going to go mainly for a piece of the pork, just because the noodles will obviously absorb some flavour, but at the end of the day, noodles are just noodles, so let's give it a try. And that is decent. I'm definitely added a bit more sriracha in. It has now definitely got that bit of a kick to go with it. But then the rest of the flavours are coming through pretty well and pretty nicely as well. The peanuts are definitely helping to contrast some of that spiciness. And then obviously the noodles are just kind of mellowing things out as well. So yeah, definitely a delicious dish. I'm going to tuck into this and try and have a relaxing Tuesday evening. But to add one more thing, and that was some of this sesame oil as well. So I've already drizzled some on, so I'm just going to add in a tiny little drizzle more around it. But yeah, I figured that this would actually help in terms of that extra nuttiness, additional depth of flavour as well. So yeah, I've spotted it on my kind of counter and realised I'd missed it. So now I shall go and enjoy this. Second time lucky, yeah. All right, everyone, it is Wednesday. Yeah, pretty sure it is. Yes, it is. The bank holiday weekends and things always get me super screwed up. But I am just going to do, as I mentioned, I probably would, some quinoa halloumi kind of salad sort of thing. It's not necessarily a salad in the sense of it having fresh greens and things, but it is obviously salad in the way that it is all mixed together. So I'm going to put a few different bits and bobs in there, and I suppose kind of hope for the best and wing it a little bit. I have looked at a few different recipes online to have a bit of an idea about what I do want to put in there, but I'll see how I actually get on with the sort of the collection of things I've put in there. Like I said, some of them are definitely winging it a little bit, but hopefully it will be tasty enough. So yeah, let me show you it as I'm going along, and then I'll try and give you a taste test at the end. And I do normally, even if I don't necessarily mention it kind of in these videos, I do then normally end up doing shorts for that exact measurements of everything as well. So if you do end up finding that you want to give any of the recipes I ever do a go, then do be sure to kind of subscribe and check back at some point as well. And then you'll be able to hopefully see the recipes. If I never mention them as a short, then it probably means that it ended up being a bit of a disaster. But obviously you'll probably know that by the time I've finished cooking the recipe and giving it a taste test anyway. But yeah, let's get on with it today. All right, so to start, I just have a really small red onion that I'm just going to try my best to finely dice up. And then I have 2 garlic cloves that I'm going to crush up as well. And then I'm going to get them so that they do get lightly pan fried in a large saucepan, whilst I then sort of chop up a few other bits that I'll show you to add in there as well, before I then add in some quinoa and some stock to it all to get that all soaking up as well. And I have given the quinoa already a really good rinse, which is why it's all spread around in here. I put some spray oil into the pan, and I'm just going to add in that onion and garlic, and then I'm going to get on with chopping a few of the bits up whilst it all kind of softens down and gains a tiny amount of colour. Do have it on a relatively low temperature, so it shouldn't do too quickly, but I did want to just get it so it's going whilst I'm adding in everything else as well. So let's do that, and I'll show you what else I'm chopping up to put in here as well before I add in the quinoa and everything. Alright, so after spending so long that my camera turned off, I managed to get into this roasted red pepper jar. I'm just going to pull a couple out, and then I've also got some sun-dried tomatoes as well. And I'm just going to roughly chop them up to put them into the pan with the onions and garlic, which at this point is definitely getting pretty nicely cooked down, because like I said, it took me so long to get into the jar. And when I say so long to get into the jar, I mean I had to get a knife and do it underneath to basically break the seal of it, to pop it out to be able to open it, because it just wasn't doing it otherwise. Which I've had a different jar like that do it to me in the past, and that was the only reason that I knew to pretty quickly revert to that method, because there have definitely been times where I've struggled for a very long time to get into it and failed. But yeah, let's get on with chopping these. I'm just going to roughly chop these up. Now I'm going to make the most of the oil as well, just to go into the sort of with everything else that's going on. So they are done in olive oil. At least they're saying olive oil in the jar anyway. This is definitely kind of a good recipe for that, I feel. And then I'm just going to chop these peppers pretty largely, and then just throw them into that pan, and then add the quinoa and the stock as well. Just obviously got the onion and garlic in here. I'm just going to add those bits in and try and get some of that oil to drain into here as well. And I will be chopping the halloumi up on this board as well, so if there is a tiny amount of oil that ends up getting across to it, it's not going to be the end of the world. Just give this all a good quick mix through before adding in a little bit of pepper, it's black pepper, and then some chili flakes as well, before then adding in the quinoa and that stock. Let's give a few good cracks of pepper there. And then the red chili flakes as well. Trying to do too many, don't want it to have a super kick, just want it to have a tiny amount of something going for it. And add in this rinsed off quinoa. Like I say, it's just been sitting in my sort of measuring sort of weighing scale bowl. And I did it this way just because obviously I wanted to make sure that I did do the right amount of quinoa. It's definitely the kind of thing that it is very easy to do an overly large amount of if you're kind of not thinking about it. So I did want to make sure that I portioned it out correctly in terms of the quantity of chicken stock that I needed to make up as well. And I'm using one of my chicken stock powders for this. But obviously, if you just have chicken stock cubes, if you've got any of your own sort of pre-made chicken stock in the freezer or anything like that, then feel free to go ahead and use that as well. You get this put into here, give it all a good mix. Then I'm just going to do it so I cover the lid, cover it with a lid, not cover with a lid, cover it with a lid, words today, and get it to finish cooking up so that then all of that liquid will disappear. And in the meantime, I'm going to get on with preparing the halloumi and frying it up as well. I've obviously got the halloumi here, and I'm just going to open it. And I probably should have not opened it directly onto the board because of all the way that there is going to be some of that kind of liquid that seeps out of this packet. Let's see if I can open it and pull the halloumi out without bringing out all of that extra liquid as well. There we go. And this is just one of the sets of 4 of them that I did get in Costco recently, because it did work out a little bit better value than if I get it in some other places. And I'm going to do it into pieces just about that kind of thickness. So probably about ½ centimetre-ish. Some of the pieces are thicker than others, and some of them aren't all the way even from top to bottom. But should still be able to kind of fry them up nicely. And obviously find that halloumi does kind of shrink down quite a lot as well. I'm just going to get a pan and heat it up with a little tiny amount of oil, but only a really small amount. I might actually just put some lemon juice straight into there, and then I'm going to put this halloumi in there, and then add a tiny amount of honey to them as well, just by brushing them up. And then I'll let them cook up and grill down a little bit or fry down, just so that they're then ready to go, sort of be chopped up a little bit more and go into that quinoa mix later on. Alright, I've started to get this a little bit warmed up, and I am now just going to pop in these bits of halloumi. Just try and do it pretty evenly so that they're not too crowded in there. But I may end up having a tiny amount of overlap. We'll have to see how well I can play during a game. Okay, there we go. So I managed to do it without any overlap. And I am just going to do this with, I'm just going to put it on the 3 for now, so that I can kind of spread it around and then use the excess that'll be on the brush to do the other couple as well. There we go. So just do that, and then I'm going to add as well just a tiny amount of the chili flakes to this, which is why I didn't want to go super heavy before. Just literally a tiny sprinkle on each of them. And now I'm just going to do it on the one side. Like I said, I don't want to end up overpowering everything else. But I'm just going to let this start to cook down. Then I'll turn them over and probably put a little bit of honey onto the other side as well. And yeah, and then like I said, I'll chop it up a little bit. And then hopefully the quinoa will be ready by then to combine everything together. In the meantime, I'm going to be productive and do some dishes. Alright, so as you can see, it's starting to heat through, but it does still have quite a lot of liquid and everything to drain out of there. So I'm just going to keep it bubbling away for now until most of that liquid has kind of gone before I go to turn it over or do anything else. I figured I would provide you with that update. And then I'm just checking on the quinoa and stuff, and that still has a little way to go as well in terms of getting rid of all of that liquid. I will make sure I keep an eye on that so that it doesn't sort of burn up or completely disappear and then get stuck to the pan. I'm now just going to flip this over because it has had quite a while and it had to do some sort of little bits of bubbling. As you can see, it's still not really sort of increased in colour a huge amount. There's some bits that are gaining some colour, but even the bit in the middle hasn't actually gained colour, just where I'll see there's quite a lot of that liquid going on in there. But now that I've turned it over, I will just continue to let it do a little bit. But I will just add an extra amount of honey on here. I'm not going to spread it out perfectly. I'm just going to do a little drizzle and go from there. I'm also going to check on this again. And that is basically all done now. So I'm just going to turn it off from the heat completely and let it kind of take it off of the heat as well. And then let it just kind of rest away in the background a little bit. Got the lid half on, half off of it. But hopefully this will finish off cooking down or colouring up a little bit, getting a bit of crispness on there. And then hopefully by then I'll have finished doing my dishes so I can serve up a speedy meal for sure. Alright, let's get some of this served up. You see it has a pretty decent colour and everything to it. So, and the amount that I did make up was enough for sort of 2 portions as well. So I will still have some left in here to just pop into a container afterwards. But you can see kind of how all of those little bits of quinoa have definitely cooked up nicely. Now I'm just going to, as I mentioned, chop up some of the halloumi and pop it on top, and then I'll give it all a taste test. Do now have this all chopped up, and I'm just going to kind of put the pieces on top and all around. No real rhyme or reason to it, so we can see all the bits of everything. There we go, all served up. I have some of the quinoa has clearly got some of the onion and the red pepper and everything on, and then that small bit of halloumi as well. Let's give it a taste test. You know what, I'm really happy with that. Has a nice bit of sort of tiny amount of kick to it, but not a huge amount. And then it's obviously got a bit of sort of, not zinginess, because zinginess isn't the right word, but from the kind of the sun-dried tomatoes and everything, it has had a little bit of bite and stuff going on in there. And then the quinoa has really soaked up that chicken stock flavour really well as well. And then there was that tiny little layer of sweetness from the honey on the halloumi as well. So yeah, I'm actually really happy with how that's turned out, and definitely think it's a good kind of meal as we head into kind of warmer days in terms of it being a spring summery kind of meal as well. But definitely good for throwing things together that you might just have kind of in your cupboards and your fridge without kind of having to go out and get, say, fresh peppers or anything like that as well. Alright everyone, it is Thursday today. Apparently I really struggle with what day of the week it is at the moment. But I am just going to do a sausage pasta bake. So I have some butcher sausages that I've taken out of the freezer, and I'm just going to pop them into the oven to cook up. I'm also going to then do some pasta as well, and then obviously drain it and set it aside. And then I'll be mixing in a few extra things along the way as well before I then mix it all together, top it with a little bit of cheese and into the oven as well. So I'll obviously show you everything as I'm going through doing it all, but I figured I'd let you know that that is the plan, just whilst I'm getting on doing some more, as usual, some more dishes whilst the sausages are starting to cook and the pasta's getting, so it gets sort of being al dente as well. I have got this pasta that is now at the al dente point, so I'm just going to drain it out. And then I'm going to take up the sausages and chop them up regardless of how cooked they are. And then put everything into another dish so that it can all go into the oven for a little bit to start to cook up and bubble away before I add any extra cheese on top as well. Into this tray, I'm going to add in some pretty thickly sliced up mushrooms, as well as then some sugar snap peas that I've just roughly chopped up, so some bits that are bigger than other bits. Just give that all a good mix through. And I also have a bundle of tomatoes to add in here as well. They are fresh tomatoes. Just going to add all of those in and add the pasta in as well. And then into here I am also going to add, it looks like just initially like it's just some leftover coconut milk, but I have already put into here some tomato puree as well, because I will be giving this all obviously a really good mix through. So I didn't see much point in sort of keeping it too separate. I figured that maybe some of that tomato puree could start to get incorporated into the coconut milk this way. Just give it all a good mix through. Then I'm also going to add in some good cracks of pepper, as well as then a bit of dried parsley as well, before I do chop those sausages up, as I mentioned, and add them in here as well. And then just let them all continue to sort of cook down for a little bit before I add in any cheese on as well. So it will probably take a fair while. I'm probably going to leave it in the oven for about 25 minutes before I add any cheese on, for about probably another 15 to 20 as well. And hopefully that will get this all to sort of reduce down a little bit as well. Okay, so as mentioned, I'm very much aware that these sausages aren't fully cooked, but they have started to gain a little bit of colour, and they're probably just about cooked through, or at least close to. So I'm just going to now do it so that I sort of chop them into that kind of size piece, and then pop them in there. And like I say, give it all another good mix through, and then it can go back into the oven. The oven's currently at 200, just a tiny dash over. So, like I said, my oven isn't a proper fan oven, so if it was a fan oven, you could probably get away with just doing it at about 190. But where mine isn't, I am just going for slightly over 200, just to give it all that bit of a helping hand to get nicely cooked up and bubbly and all that kind of stuff as well. Okay, so I am adding all of this into here, and like I said, I'll give it a good mix up. Then into the oven it can go for a little while, so that these sausages are just about actually cooked. So they'll definitely continue to cook up super well whilst they are in here as well. I'm going to do it so that they all stay fairly well near to the top so that they don't get too submerged into some of that liquid. I'm just trying to distribute it out a little bit better. There we go. All right, so whilst that is doing away in the oven, I'm just going to do some Wensleydale old style sort of Kit Calvert cheese to get it grated up so that it can then obviously go nicely on top of everything as well. And I am including the rind in this grating as well, because it does add a tiny amount of extra flavour and it is perfectly edible, especially in such a small amount when it will all be grated down. You won't notice it sort of texture wise or anything. But obviously if that's not the kind of thing that you're into, then just do whatever kind of cheese you like and it is to your preference as well. That will be a nice amount to have on there, just kind of sprinkled around on top. There's still quite a bit of time before I need to actually put it on there, but I figured I'd give it a nice bit of a grating so that I can put the cheese back into the fridge and just relax. Okay, so as you will be able to see, it has crisped up now super nicely on top. There is still a fair amount of liquid in the bottom, but it has become a lot more integrated in terms of that sort of tomato puree into that coconut milk as well. So I'm going to give it all a bit more of a stir up now, just to try to stop those sausages or anything from burning up too badly. But you can see the tomatoes in there have become super soft. They're kind of disintegrating into everything as well. And now that I've given that all a good mix up, again, hopefully that will help the kind of everything to stop from burning as well. I'm just going to sprinkle on the rest of the, well, not the rest of that cheese that I grated up earlier as well. And just get this nicely across there. So then it will go back into the oven for about another 20 to, I would say 20 to sort of 30 minutes. Depends if I get distracted, to if I keep it in for nearer to 30 or not. But just do that. And like I say, it's obviously not a huge amount of cheese, but it will be a nice additional amount. And I do want to remind you that I did just do it. So I did 1 portion of pasta in there and then those 2 sausages as well. So whilst it looks vast, that is because of sort of all of the sort of the tomatoes and then the vegetables and everything. So this is actually just a 1-person serving. But let me get this put back into the oven. You can see the cheese has definitely got nice and melted, and now there are some bits of sort of crispiness on top, and some of the pasta's got some nice colouring going on as well. So I'm just going to give it all a quick taste test and just kind of a texture test as well. As you can see, most of that liquid now, there's still some liquid in the bottom, but a lot more of it has disappeared. I'm going to give it a quick taste test and then I'm going to serve it up, even just because I don't really want to attempt to eat out of this. So I might, we'll see how I feel to my maximum laziness. Let me just try and get all of this together, including a bit of that sausage there as well. Okay, so you know what, I was really reluctant in a way to add the coconut milk in, but it has worked super well. A lot of it got absorbed by kind of the mushrooms and obviously some of that pasta as well. And definitely just mainly adds a nice creaminess to it with a mild bit of coconut flavour. Obviously a lot of the other flavours end up coming through a bit more. But if anything, it's actually kind of accentuated the flavour of the mushroom as well as them. Even sort of the tomato a little bit as well. And that's probably helped by some of the tomato puree that I did put in there. But ended up being super good, and the sausages and everything, like I said, they've kind of gone nice and crispy in some bits whilst remaining soft as well, just to add in a little bit of extra texture. So like I say, I'm going to tuck into this, and I hope you enjoyed kind of seeing what I do as a bit of a throw together meal when I have random ingredients or random bits and bobs that I need to use up, just to kind of make it work instead of purchasing anything extra as well. Obviously I am trying to do bits of Project Pan and Project Pantry and everything. So this is the kind of meal that sometimes you do just have to throw together, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. Luckily, this is one of the times where it definitely does. All right, everyone, it is Friday, thankfully. I'm definitely pleased. It is the end of the week, and I am just going to do a chicken thigh kind of creamy mushroom dish with some rice on the side for dinner as well. What is going on with my hair? Anyway, I've got it, so it does take quite a while. It'll probably take about an hour in all. So I'm just going to do it so I show you what I'm getting on with for doing with the chicken itself, because it does need to go into the oven. And then I'll show you other bits of prep as we're going along. And I'm just going to do my rice as usual in my rice cooker, so nothing fancy there. Like I said, then I'll have plenty of time to get on with doing the prep of all of the other bits as well. But this has definitely been a pretty simple week in terms of food, but it's definitely been a pretty enjoyable one as well, just because I've obviously, like I said, sort of mentioned perhaps in my previous videos, especially if you watch my grocery shop videos, you'll know this, but I have been struggling a little bit with getting back into cooking regularly, cooking proper meals, sticking to meal plans since after my partner and his brother were here. It definitely threw me off track a little bit, but I am getting back into it slowly. So I've just been doing pretty simple recipes, as well as desperately trying to use up a few things that I have in my cupboards, my fridge and my freezer for sort of project pantry as well. And that has been helping me to keep my budgets lower. But let me show you what I'm getting on with today for doing this chicken dish, and hopefully trying not to babble away too much, as I always seem to. I've popped my chicken thighs onto this tray, and I am just going to give them a really good kind of dab down, just because I want to be able to minimise the amount of moisture that they have. The recipe that I'm following does say about keeping the skins on and the bone in them as well, so I am going to do that. And then once I've done this, I am just going to coat them, or not coat them, but give them a good amount of salt as well, just because that will help them to get kind of crisped up quite nicely. So I've got the salt here. I'm going for my pink salt rather than anything else. I thought about using my mulled and smoked salt, but not sure how well that would work with the rest of the recipe. So you can see it's obviously quite a lot of salt, but it will help to, like I said, sort of drawing out some of the extra moisture as well. So this is going into the oven at 200 Celsius. It's probably going to be in there, like I said, for about 50 minutes to a full hour, just until it does show up as having that meat being completely sort of cooked through as well. So to start with, just going to put in some kind of quartered to slightly more chopped up mushrooms into a large frying pan with a bit of salt, and just dry fry them, just to make sure that I can sort of get rid of any moisture that might be in them, shrink them down a little bit and just get them cooked up. And I'll be adding in a few other bits later on as well. Those mushrooms also reduced down quite a lot. I've added in some olive oil as well. Now it is time to add in some of that shallot as well. So it is a pretty large shallot, fairly diced. Probably could have diced it a bit thinner, but my knife skills aren't quite that perfect. So I'm just going to do this for about 5 minutes on a medium-low heat, just to help get those onions all sort of coloured up and softened down as well. And so that'll help the mushrooms to keep cooking. And I'll add in a few more bits as well. Okay, time to add in the garlic. There we go, so that's just 2 small to medium cloves added in. I'm also going to add in a teaspoon, when I can find one, there we go, a teaspoon of whole grain mustard as well. Just add that in. Give that a good mix through. I'm just going to do that until it's sort of a bit fragrant. That's the only way I can really describe it. And then I'm going to add in a few more things, and then it'll be a case of leaving it sort of simmer down for a while. Okay, so just going to add in about, what's this, about 400 ml of stock. And then I have a 300 ml pot of creme fraiche here. I'm going to add about half of it. Probably just a bit under, rather than on the overside. Just get it off of my spoon there as well. Put this back into the fridge before I forget. And also give it all a good mix through. And just leave it to simmer away. Just keep leaving it to simmer away pretty much. Maybe turning it down to an even lower temperature until that chicken is all cooked through. But I might also add in a small amount of pepper in here as well. I think that would be quite beneficial to do. And then I'm thinking I might add in some dried chives as well. Okay. And then, like I said, I'll be leaving that to simmer away. And then I'm probably going to pop some green beans or something into the microwave just before serving as well. Feel that would be a good kind of side to go with it. Either be that or so. Actually, I still have some sugar snap peas left, so it would make sense to do those, I think, just to finish them off. So there we go. I've added in the sugar snap peas and some of the rice. I did make extra rice up, and I have put that into a container as well, just so that it can then get added. So I have one of the bits of the chicken thighs and then some of that sauce and everything as well. And I did add in some tomatoes into my sauce as well to give it a little bit more vibrancy and everything. This chicken is nicely cooked up. Just going to pop them there into the middle. And then just put this sauce over it as well. And then the rest of the sauce can go into that container. And I did indeed also add in some pepper and chives to this as well. Just pour that there. There we go. Just wanted to give this a little taste test. So I'm going in for the rice and then some of that sauce as well. So I know that how the chicken and stuff will taste, so I'm not going to go for that bit. That's really nice and creamy, obviously as you might expect. But then because of the chicken stock, it has that nice kind of warming undertone to go with it. But the mustard's definitely bringing something out of it. It kind of lingers afterwards and gives that sort of warmth. Obviously not in a sort of a spicy way or anything, but gives kind of a warming finish. It definitely works really well and kind of offsets the creaminess as well of it. Yeah, it's just a really nice meal overall, I think. So I'm going to tuck into this, and if you're still here, I do appreciate you taking the time to watch. I hope you enjoyed, and as always, it did give you a little bit of inspiration. If you did enjoy it, please consider hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed, hitting the subscribe button. And I look forward to catching you all again very, very soon for either another one of these videos, a grocery video, a recipe video, or something else entirely. Until then though, take care. Goodbye.